Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, Marvin. How are you?
Just trying to stay out of trouble. I checked out your weather report before I hopped on to record with you, and it looks like you guys, one, got a fair amount of rain, and then two, looks like you're cooling off like other folks in the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, no, we did get a pretty good shot sort of mid to late last week that bumped everything pretty good. Didn't really flood. Didn't really, do any crazy damage. The new came up quite a bit for a couple of days, and it's still dirty. It's still on the high side, but coming down every day and pretty quickly. So I don't see any reason why I won't be able to be on the river sort of towards the end of the week. And then our trout streams got bumped a little bit. We pretty much recovered overnight. They don't take long to run out and clear up. So, I've been out a couple days this week already, trout fishing and I think that our water temps were not, crazy warm prior to the rain, but I think a little bit of the cool off kind of, sparked the fishing just a little bit. And then that bump and flow, in the summertime, always seems to do a little bit for it. So trout fishing's been fantastic because of it. And, we should get back on the smallmouth train as soon as the rivers will let us.
Yeah. And speaking of the rivers letting you, is that, how is that kind of higher, probably stained water translate into tactics as you get back out on the water?
Certainly we'll be doing some streamer fishing if we're out there on days with heavy stain in the water. Bright contrasty colors like chartreuse and black and blue and black and that sort of thing. But if you've got any kind of more than a foot or two of visibility, topwater fishing is still pretty viable. And I'll just this time of year is starting to transition in bug colors to the darker colors because we've got, the cicadas are going to start falling here in the next, week or two. And, there's usually a point in the summer at which I start to notice them eating darker colors a little better. So, but with stained water, I'll tend to fish chartreuse a lot more just because it, seems to show up a little better with darker water. And then certainly if we've got a lot of stain and it's high and holding water is minimal, we'll be dredging the bottom with crayfish flies and sculpin flies and hellgrammite flies and that kind of thing.
Yeah, got it. And we've got a really neat question for you this time around, Matt. It's from our newest Patreon patron, Jeremy, and he's been fishing with his wife's grandfather's old Fenwick fiberglass rod. And he says he's been fishing with it a lot, and it's needs a little TLC, and wanted us to see if we could get some, general care and maintenance tips. So I thought that was kind of right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, well, it's not right in my wheelhouse, but I've learned a little bit from the guy at Reilly Rodcrafters who knows what he's talking about, and so I've got some probably a little more in depth than you need, but I've got some sort of general maintenance suggestions for fly rods to kind of make them last as long as they can, but I would say probably the first thing that's going to get dirty and needs cleaning on any fly rod is going to be the cork handle, just because, if you're stripping fly line or holding it with dirty hands, you're just going to transfer some of that dirt to the cork. And really all you need for that is just a clean rag with some soapy water. Not much soap, just a little bit to get it, to cut the grease a little bit. And just sort of rub that on the cork. That'll take most of the grime off. And then once you're done, you can just rinse it with water to get any of the soap residue off. Worst case, because they, can get pretty dirty. If the cork's still pretty soiled, you can use a Mr. Clean magic eraser. just with a little bit of water on it. Rubbing that on the cork will really take, sort of the really deep-seated stains off of the cork. And then there's a product called U40. It's a sealer for cork that you can put on the handle, particularly once it's started to wear a little bit. That'll just make it last a long time and protect it from any further damage. But to get even more in depth, if you're going to clean the actual rod itself, starting with the guides, you can clean them with just some Q-tips with some rubbing alcohol. The blank itself doesn't take much. Again, just a terry cloth or some kind of clean cloth with warm water and a little bit of soap. I think Dawn works best just for cutting grease and getting grime off of things. And again, just like the cork, you're going to wipe it down with just a wet towel or soak it in something, bathtub or something like that in sections just to get the soapy residue off. For the reel seat, if it's metal, just like you clean the guides with a Q-tip or a cloth with some rubbing alcohol, works great. If it's a wooden reel seat, you want to be a little more careful. I would just use soapy water, with a clean towel again, and then just making sure that it dries out totally and you get all the soapy residue off. And then to sort of extend the life of the rod blank and keep it clean and looking nice, you can use I think it's pronounced carnauba wax paste to the blank with a cloth and let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes and then wipe off the excess and just kind of get it polished up with the cloth and then looking clean and shiny, or as clean and shiny as it's going to get. But very specifically to fiberglass rods, I've fished a couple of old Fenwick rods, but I can't be positive what you've got. A lot of the higher end fiberglass rods are finished unsanded, so they have ribbing sort of up and down the rod blank. And so when you're applying wax and waxing the rod blank, you always want to go with the grain of those ribs. So you don't want to go sort of long ways. You want to go around the rod blank with your cloth. And then the last thing that I would say is pretty important with fiberglass rods is never to leave them in any kind of extreme heat situation for a long period of time. It is glass, and especially if they're left that way with some kind of bend in them, like maybe they're strung up and the fly line is reeled a little too tight, and it's the rod tip's bent, or it's sort of bent sitting in your car. A fiberglass rod can take a form if it's been sitting in high heat for a period of a couple of weeks. A day or two is not going to be bad, but just as a forewarning, especially if it's got sentimental value, that's a way to ruin a fiberglass rod pretty easily and passively. So avoid that at all costs, and that's about all I got for you.
Yeah, well, that's a plenty, and thank your dad, and I won't tell him that you said he was an expert.
I won't either.
Well, listen, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. If you'll send them to us, you can email them to us. You can send them to us on our Facebook page. Hit us up on our Instagram page. If we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and you'll get into a drawing for some really cool stuff from Matt at the end of the season. And before we go on to our tradition with you to talk about what you're writing for the Rural Virginian, I did want to check in with you, Matt, and see how things were going with your rescheduled smallmouth school.
Yeah, it's well, we're trudging along. Still got some spots available. So if you're interested, definitely get in touch with us. It should be a great event. It always is, and we're going a little later in the season this year. Last year we had some issues with high water, and we did it in the springtime. That's when everybody's schedule was free. But We actually had some really good fishing last time. Despite high water, we found some secondary options. But this year, we're looking at September 27 to 30. And so, fingers crossed, we should have, hopefully not low water, but we should have traditional, low water, good topwater fishing, and be a great way to sort of close out the traditional part of the smallmouth season. So we're looking forward to it, and anybody that can make it out.
Yeah, and I would imagine they should just shoot you an email and you can hook them up with all the details?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and folks, if you are into smallmouth fishing and you're in the mid-Atlantic, you really owe it to yourself to check out this event. A ton of people that learned everything they know, or a lot of what they know, from Chuck Kraft are going to be guiding. You got Ellie Rhodes. You've got, for example, you've also got a great person and a great casting instructor, Joe Mahler, who'll be there to work with you on your casting. So, if it's something that interests you, and the best part is it's not going to be super hot.
It's not going to be super hot. We've got, lodging and all meals are included. We always do a big, sort of dinner, at a center location on the farm that we stay on at the end of every day, which is a good time. So, you get essentially 2 guided trips out of it, but you get the added value of, hanging out with the guides and people who know what they're talking about, and some fly tying lessons and casting instruction and that kind of thing. So, and all for pretty solid value. So it's a pretty good opportunity, I think. So, and I always look forward to it because it's a good time to hang out with some great people. So hopefully we'll have another great event this year.
Well, there you go. And of course, we got to keep the tradition alive to have you tell us what's showing up in the Rural Virginian that you've written recently. Yeah.
So this week, whether it comes out today or tomorrow, I don't know, but I've thrown it up on my website, is just sort of a story. I don't know what you call it. It's a essay, I guess, / descriptor of our annual cicada hatch, sort of the fire under our, best topwater fishing of the year. Like I said earlier in the podcast, we'll have probably in the next week or week and a half, 2 weeks or so, certainly 2 weeks from now, we'll start seeing these annual cicadas that have been buzzing in the trees all summer starting to die off. They've completed their life cycle, and as adults, their purpose is through, so they die, and the ones that are near the river end up in the water, and smallmouth can't resist them. So that fishing's coming up, and it's going to be, it always is, really solid. And if you're ever curious about their life cycle or exactly how that pattern works on the river, then check it out.
Yeah, and I'll absolutely drop a link to that in the show notes. And before I let you hop, Matt, because I know you're getting ready to do another 15 days straight run on the river, why don't you let folks know where they can find you online so they can book you and maybe catch the tail end of the smallmouth bite or get primed for muskie season?
Yeah, man. The website is MattReillyFlyFishing.com, and all my contact info is on there. So however you feel best contacting me. Email, I think, is usually best, especially when I get busy. But yeah, still got a handful of dates open in September. Yeah, if you're looking to get on the river, towards the end of the smallmouth season, the best is yet to come. So I look forward to fishing with you.
Absolutely. And listen, folks, the heat's breaking and the conditions are just going to keep improving. You owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Marvin.